The Macabre World podcast is brought to you by Darker Art Studio, home of real human bone jewelry. Stock and custom pieces are available, so visit us on the web at www.darkerartstudio.com and show them your darker art side. Macabre World, a podcast from Darker Art Studio, where we explore the dark, strange, and unusual from this world and beyond. Hello, and thank you for joining the Macabre World podcast. I am your host, Rocky Digati, and today we have Kenn Edwards, inarguably the weirdest guy in Utah. Kenn, how are you? I was going to introduce Kenn's a rune reader. Kenn is a podcaster. He's got so many things, irons in the fire, and he's a lot of fun. But basically, I got to wrap you up in a sentence. So you're the weirdest guy in Utah. How are you, Kenn?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. And one, I'm not quite sure because the gentleman that I listened to on your show not too long ago, who is a hypnotist and comedian, lives just south of Salt Lake. So we don't live that far from each other.
Yeah, and you know what's really funny? He was from where I'm broadcasting from now.
I remember you saying that, and I was like, that guy's in Utah. I'm like, oh, we're very close. We're actually maybe like 45 minutes from each other.
Very, very nice. Very, very funny guy. Has a lot of cool content. And speaking of content, you have not one, not two, 3 podcasts.
Yes, 3 podcasts that are currently running. There's actually, can I swear on your podcast? I forgot.
Shit, yeah.
Shit, yes. I actually I have 2.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, get it done. That was, yeah. There's 2 more actually that I forgot to mention to you. One's that has only lasted a season, but it was about 50 episodes every week for a year, called Web of Resonance. And then another one that chronicled my experience finding out I had cancer and kind of what I went through in those first 2 months, because pretty much I didn't talk to anyone about my cancer until I knew for sure what was happening, because I didn't want to, hey, I've got cancer. And they're like, well, what kind do you have? And you never know how to answer those questions. And I didn't want it to be weird. So that's like this very short, No One Has Time for Death. And that one's like a very short podcast, but it really is anonymous for like the first half of it. And it talks about my cancer experience. But the other 3 I have going are Rune Walking in Modern Times, which is my own personal podcast about the runes of Northern Europe. Then we also have Psychic Medium, the podcast, because that is another one of my titles is a psychic and a medium and psychic medium, with a good friend of mine who's a brilliant psychic medium. And then the last one I have is called Manly Minds, and that's done with one of my really good friends. And we kind of dive into that very shallow mind of the modern man.
You know, I don't think Ancient Man was. I think Ancient Man was kind of shallow too. I don't think I'm just going to blame modern times.
No, I think kind of if you have a penis, you're kind of shallow. At some point, like that's as far as you have to, like.
I haven't overheard too many conversations in the ladies' room, have you now, Kenn? Because let me tell you, I've heard a few corkers that lead me to believe that I think we're all a lot more equal than we'd like to admit.
Yeah, I would love to agree with that, but unfortunately, I'm not one of the ones who doesn't have a penis, so I don't want to like.
To assume?
Like my.
No,
yeah,
it's true.
like
I'm going to tell you right now, no assumptions necessary. It's absolutely true. Well, the thing is that it's just like we're getting into a delicious age now where things are starting level. Playing fields are getting leveled. People are allowed to be themselves. People are fighting for other people to be, to have their own choices and stuff. So I'm just going to say it's gotten a lot more egalitarian. It used to be just like, there's that dumb guy just looking at some girl that's going, nice hooters. I don't like them if they have big hooters. You know how many size queens I know that are not gay men? Well, yeah, that's possible. So it's out there. Yeah. It's out there. So, I think we're all dirty big pigs. And I think, it's a pretty equal across the way. Yeah, we're fun. This is a good time.
I fucking love you right now.
Because like I said, we're all dirty big pigs. So let's just, get it out there.
Let's enjoy
that stuff. So runes, I first heard about runes, I want to say in the early 90s.
Okay.
It was the first time, and it was marketed. A friend of mine had a bookstore that sold tarot cards, and it was marketed in with that market where it was, little velvet bag and a little book, and it gave you the runes, and it gave you an idea how to lay them out and what they all meant. And it did give you the Reader's Digest Cliff Note bit on where the runes came from. So you had like half a clue.
Yeah.
And I mean half a clue, because I think people got these things and they didn't know what to do with them. A lot of them ended up in the bottom of your potted plants. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly what happens. I just over this past weekend spent some time teaching at Spirit Con, which happens here in Utah. And people want me to teach about the runes, but it's like, I have a 12-week course.
Right.
It's real. Like I can tell you, this is how I see it. I don't even see myself as a teacher. I see myself as a facilitator of an introduction between you and most of the time yourself, or you and the runes, which I believe are actually part of you, of each of us anyway.
Even if we're not Northern European?
Absolutely.
Not being funny.
Absolutely. No, it's true. I absolutely think that.
A lot of people feel like they can only identify with methods or pathways. I mean, and it's, there's a point where it's cultural appreciation, not appropriation, I think.
And I think that's where, if we'll jump into this word shaman real quick, because I am an apprentice shaman in the Northern Traditions Shamanic Guild. I will be taking my initiation in the fall. And that word is, unfortunately right now, it's the word that we use that in any language we say shaman and you know exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
It has nothing to do with cultural appropriation. I do feel a bit like at this point in time, and from my perspective, I believe anybody can speak, the runes can speak to anybody. And most of us have some sort of tie to Northern Europe anyway. So whether that be genetic or because we were adopted familial, we have some sort of tie to that.
Well, it's a huge part of culture.
Oh, huge. And unfortunately, at this point, from my perspective, it's one of the only ones that's, I shouldn't say that. That's horrible. I feel like I'm accepting and open, and I wish that there were a lot of other traditions in the world that were, because that's really the only way they're going to survive. I know from Northern traditions, it was an oral, Viking, Norse, Anglo-Saxon. It was a very oral tradition. And so not everything got passed down. A lot of Eastern things got really passed down because they got written down. And then they've gotten brought here to the West, and we have them. And for whatever reason, which I think if we went to a deep dive, we could find, we love the book. We love to be able to pick up a book and say, look it, I'm right, because in the book it says so. But for me, we're trying to reconstruct a tradition, which means we're going to have to intuit it. We're going to have to talk to the gods. We're going to have to feel it in our bodies, and we're going to have to reconstruct the pieces that are missing. And let it evolve. Really, yes, and let absolutely. It evolve.
That's huge.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. Because the reason I call the podcast Rune Walking in Modern Times is because the runes are passed down to us right now from an alphabet, and also from Norse rune poem, Icelandic, and Anglo-Saxon rune poems. Well, I was explaining to the class this weekend, if I'm telling you something and you're from a culture that has no idea what a horse is, and I tell you, hey, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You have zero idea what the hell I'm talking about. Zero.
So you can't picture it. Yeah.
No, right. So sometimes these poems that are so, they're whispered secrets anyway. They're puzzles in themselves. And then
are they riddles?
I think they could be. I think it gets a little, and depending on who translates them.
Oh God, yeah.
You're getting into a hole. So it kind of gets a little messy. And I think people really, folks really like to be reconstructionists, and they like to go to the books and the Eddas and the sagas and say, this is what it's written and this is how it should be. And that's great, but we don't have the cultural context that they were surviving in. So we do have to, and they do absolutely apply modern times, into our modern ways of being and living, and they can be transformational for us now.
When did you first start working with runes, and how did that come about? How did you discover them per se?
I was living in Portland, Oregon, and well, first of all, I grew up LDS, so I was Mormon. Went on a mission, did all that, and left the church when I was about 21. Probably about 33, 34, I moved to Portland, Oregon. And one day I was in a book, like a spiritual metaphysical bookstore. And there was this woman with this crazy curly white hair. And she was giving readings, but they were rune readings. And I really didn't know what the fuck that was.
Oh, cool.
And I walked in, and we just recognized each other. You know, we just knew each other. And at that point, I began, her name is Ingrid Kincaid, and she can be found at ingridkincaid.com. Really great. If you can have her on the show, she's fantastic. I love her. One of my very, very good friends.
Awesome. I'll tell her that you sent her.
Yeah, please. And she gave me a reading. And at that point, I had just felt in my body an awakening of memories that were much older than me.
So you saw the key to the door when you picked it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I felt the key. I felt it. Absolutely.
Now, had you had a lot of third eye kind of experiences prior to that? Not like, I know you said the psychic medium, the podcast you work with. Are you yourself a psychic medium?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
So were you always a little to the left?
So
to speak.
The funny thing about that, the funny thing about that,
have that gift arrive later in life. It can be different for all kinds of people.
Well, absolutely. And I believe that there was a point in time growing up where, the God of the Christians really enjoyed having, and enjoys still having, those of us who are gifted psychically as part of his flock. And so there were many times where we're taught in that it's the still small voice, it's the prompting of the Holy Ghost, and really it's your psychic gifts. So I believe from even very early on I had those, but I didn't know how to classify them or contextualize them, except that it was a gift or something from God. And it wasn't mine. It was only, through his grace that it happened. But I kind of, even in college at that point, when I had left the church, I began to do readings for my friends, and then kind of put it off for a little bit, and really, pursued my corporate career. And then when the runes came back into play, that's when everything really opened back up, and I felt good about it.
Well, that's awesome. And it must, now you mentioned, was this before you started? And I hate this term. I'm using it on purpose so I can make fun of it. And I'm a fellow survivor, so yeah. I'm not casting aspersions. I hate the term cancer journey.
Yeah.
Unless you're taking me on a fucking cruise ship, it is not a journey. It is not a trip. It is something you have to get through. Mm-hmm. But I just like, are you new on your journey? This is not a journey.
It's not a journey. No, I completely agree with you. I think it's really
it's gotten out of hand with that, because I think people are scared to talk about what it really is. It's a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think the only time you can use cancer journey in the same, like, together, is if you're dating a cancer astrologic sign, like, because that's a whole fucking journey in of itself, right?
Yeah.
But
have I mentioned I live with one?
Yeah. Okay,
and he's right on the cusp of Leo too, so he's not just emotionally as dramatic.
Oh, you're
but you know what? Yes. I gotta tell you, he's still the most level-headed, reasonable person in the house, because I'm a triple Leo.
Oh shit, you guys are
a lot of
That's
fun.
an interesting, that you are having a lot of fun.
Oh,
there is hair everywhere in that place.
Well, let's put it this way. Only on my side of things.
He's probably like me with no hair.
I think musician.
Ooh, really? That's fascinating. Okay, I like that.
We've got some fun folks in our friends group. It's when you do, and I think it's fair to say that anybody who's been in this position, even if it wasn't you and it was somebody you cared about, when you go through that, it changes you. And it changes the people around you. It changes your life. You can make it a change for the better, provided that your outcomes work that way. But it's definitely a change. How did you incorporate this into that change?
So I got to tell you that my cancer journey began. You're welcome.
Thanks. I do appreciate it. That's good.
Yeah. Back in, let's see, I had been toying. All of this weaves in together. So stick with me. I will get back to it. I promise. Okay. So back in 2019,
the journey begins.
I sold my spiritual metaphysical store, and my friends who owned it with me and I moved to Oregon. At that point, I did it so that I could take some time off and really dive into my spirituality, really like construct runewalker.com and really begin doing that full time. Well, part of that was beginning my journey into becoming a shaman of the Northern tradition. So that was like November of 2019. My mother passed away March 10th of 2020.
Oh, I'm sorry for that.
Thank you. Just before COVID happened, right? So I moved back to Utah to stay with my dad and help him through this. And I have one sibling, and her first phone call to me, besides, mom died, was, when are you coming back? Because I can't do this myself. And he's perfectly capable of handling himself, by the way, my dad. So I moved back in April. I was diagnosed with cancer October 1st of 2020, and I had oral cancer. So I actually had squamous cell carcinoma on the bottom of my tongue.
Got it.
And so in all of that amount of time right there, I began my shamanic journey, which most shamanic journeys in the world, in different cultures, end up with shamanic death. You go through certain deaths and certain trials, and the theory is so that you can be rewired or reprogrammed by the gods or the beings on the other side, so that you are then able to do the things they need you to do here. And so I was diagnosed right before Thanksgiving. I had 20% of my tongue removed, the front to left part. So after that, and I had all these podcasts, so I'm like, what the fuck? What? Please, like, we didn't know how much of my tongue I was going to have to lose.
Right.
We had no idea.
If you were going to sound normal afterwards, sure.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was going to have a tongue. We didn't know. And so luckily, 6 weeks of speech therapy and no physical therapy. So luckily, I'm at that point. Well, right around the time I was having my cancer, my dad had a growth on the top of his head. And so he then, in March of 2021, is diagnosed with melanoma. And luckily, we live here in northern Utah. And he was referred to the Huntsman Cancer Institute.
Fantastic institution.
Oh my God. They were conducting a study using one of the drugs that is already approved for certain cancers, but they were doing it before the cancer surgery to see if they could get it to go, like, not shrink. Shrink is the wrong term. They've corrected me many times, but your body eats the cancer and gets rid of it, attacks it and gets rid of it. So
see if they could shrink the margins.
Yeah. So literally went through that, had it. they couldn't find it when they were done, by the way. He was the most successful candidate they had in that program.
Fantastic.
They still removed the top of it, part of the top of his head. They checked that whole piece that they took, and there were no cancer cells. So
awesome.
Yeah, it was, and we still both go back every 6 months right now. Cause for me, it's only been, 2 years, almost, well, a year and a half, I guess. And for him, it's been almost a year now. And we go back every 3 to 6 months, and
everybody's good.
Everybody's good.
Love hearing that.
It's but it was like I was on another podcast, and the gentleman was also a survivor of cancer, and he said to me, he goes, I get it, because there was I had cancer, he had prostate cancer, and he went through it, and he goes, there are times when I just kept saying, like, why me, why me? And I told him, I said, let me throw a wrench into this for you. He goes, okay, what do you got? I said, I never said that, because mine most likely came from my tobacco usage in my 20s. So I have no one to blame but myself. And he was very quiet for a second. And I said, I knew I did it full well knowing that that's a possibility. And so I never through any of it was like, God, why me? It was like, okay, so this is what I have. Let's
get rid of it.
Yeah, I planted corn. I'm going to harvest corn. You can't plant corn and harvest barley. It doesn't work that way. So it's like, this is what I'm dealt, and we just have to do it. If we survive it, great. But guess what? None of us is getting out alive. So I'm just checking out a little earlier than everyone else. But it really has.
Thankfully not.
Thankfully not. Yeah. And so I really do feel like, in my case, it came about, and it was part of my journey to becoming a shaman who is useful to my community.
Well, something I don't think a lot of people talk about, and it's kind of relevant here, is, and I don't like the term survivor guilt, because I grew up Catholic. That's my flaming bridge behind me. Yeah. And I've had enough of guilt.
Done.
And people don't start writing me letters. Okay, do not write me letters about Catholic guilt. Whose guilt is worse? Because, I got
not a competition.
Well, it's not a competition, people. It is not. And if it did, I think we all know that there's a whole group we're not mentioning that win. So,
yeah. Oh,
but, yeah. And it's absolutely it's a crazy moment though, where when you've cleared. And it should be said that I don't think anybody truly clears cancer, because even if we're testing cancer free, there's always a part of your brain that goes, oh God, it's going to come back. And I think that's a very real thing. And it changed my outlook in the sense that, what upset me and on what level.
Yeah.
Where I started to prioritize and compartmentalize my life entirely differently after going through that. But the other thing is, I think you get sort of a, why am I here? Okay, there are people out there, and this was my personal statement in my head. There are people out there you happen to know damn right well are better people than you are. Why are you here and they're gone? Find something to do.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that
that everyone is better than no. Just
No.
There is a moment where you kind of almost feel like, you look around and say, all right, I say, why me? But in the opposite effect, why was I spared? What am I supposed to be doing with this?
Yeah. And so, like, I don't know, to give it a little bit of a poke the bear, maybe for a second, with the poking the bear being cancer. And what if there is really no other reason that you're here? And what if the only value in life is the value you place on it? And what if the only thing that's valuable to you is what you want to do and how you can contribute and how you want to contribute? And taking this intermediary out of the situation, right? This very Christian concept of we have to have someone to get there, and someone's in control of what's going on. If we take that out, that is such a mind fuck.
It really is.
Oh my God. It took me, I went through, gosh, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago. I had gone to Ireland with Ingrid, actually. And I've fallen down a rabbit hole of, oh my God, what if the only meaning my life has is what I want it to be? And what if there is no meaning beyond that? And then I, for like a year and a half, lost my faith, lost my ability to have faith. How about that? It's not lost my faith. I lost my ability to have faith. And that was quite the hole to pull myself out of.
It's a
and
dark place.
It can be a very dark place. And then I felt like I came out the other end. I came out the other side in, Wonderland, more empowered, actually, because I felt like, okay, I'm no longer going to be doing this, or I'm going to try really hard not to. I'm really going to try really hard not to try to fulfill everyone else's expectations for what life should be. I'm going to find in myself what I'm passionate about, what I want to do, and what I really think can add and make a difference in my community, whether that be local or global. And I'm going to do it. And it's going to be because I want to do it, not because I'm supposed to do it. And when the time comes for me to not do that anymore, the time will come and I will go back into the earth and I will feed the animals that are living in the dirt, that then feed the grass, that then feeds the cows, that then feeds the people who are here now. And we continue the cycle.
You remember those TV commercials back when we were kids, where they would take the Folgers instant coffee and this is what I want to do. I want to have a collation at the end of my service, and I want to have some very bland food and lots of pepper shakers. And at the end of the toward the end of the meal, I want people to kind of I want like an MC to go, now at this service, we've replaced your pepper shakers with the cremains of Rocky Digati.
Yes.
So just have a little fun with it. But I've worked for, oh gosh, if I start adding up the time, I get nervous. 30 plus years in historic cemetery preservation.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love hanging out there still. And all that kind of stuff. And everybody goes, so well, you must have a lot of ideas. I'm like, I don't care. What do you mean you don't care? I said, I don't care. It's not going to make any difference to me. Whatever the people who are left behind find comforting. And I'm going to say cheap if they really want to honor my memory. I read a book called Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers by Mary Roach. She's a New York Times writer. She's got a great style. Her style, for even with heavy subjects, has a bit of the wit and lilt to it. And she's an engaging writer. So she herself takes you on the journey with her. She went and interviewed people to find out, when people donate their bodies to science, what happens. Yeah. This book had such a profound impact on me. That's one of the ways the Avenue Through Darker Art Studios was born. I make human bone jewelry out of bones that are legally and ethically obtained from the retired medical specimens. So, and I make human bone. It's the idea of how we are eternal in some way, whether we are art, whether we are a concept, whether we are love, whether we are all those things or none of those things, it's all out there, and it's big, heavy shit to think about, ain't it?
It's amazing. For those of us who I don't have any offspring, and what are my contributions besides my cells being, broken down and going back into the cycle, which most times doesn't happen right now because of that big asbestos box, right?
Right. The vault.
But oh God, I just want to be burned and pushed out into the Great Salt Lake on a boat like a Viking. I don't know. I just think that would
I think the runes have gone to your head, Ken.
I think that's not going to happen, but I really want it to.
I want to go Merlin style.
Yes. I think, it's one of those things about, oh gosh, I don't know. I try not to have too much hubris when it comes to what I'm leaving behind, because I just feel like that it puts me in a headspace of things that maybe have to happen, or it gives me a little bit, I think it alters my perception a bit. And like, we're not the top of the food chain. Humans are not the top of the food chain at all, right? We're seeing that with like
sharks,
some diseases,
Shark Week. Shark Week teaches us that.
I love Shark Week.
That's great stuff.
And but we're not, you know, and we think that we are, and we think that we're separate from this cycle of life on Earth. And I know that the wisdom inside of me is also inside of you and inside of each of us. And we just need to try and make things how we want them, and good. And I don't like that term good. I would like us
good and evil has gotten out of hand.
Oh, I'm so over the binary of everything. I'm really like, I almost feel like even, and the runes are very much like this too. Like, I don't see them as being light and dark, good and bad. And they even exist on more than a spectrum. I feel like it's more of a hoop, and you just kind of circle your way back. Yeah. So I feel like I'm just really like, I just would like us to be productive and healthy and not, God, like stifled by these modern bridles and saddles that we all have.
It's gotten a little kooky out there. It really has.
I was talking to one of my clients today, and she was talking about their brand new neighborhood, their neighborhood like emergency preparation coalition, and they have meetings. And she goes, they're crazy preppers. They're not just like food storage like the Mormons do, 72-hour food storage. She's like, they're guns and blah, and she goes, I just had to walk away. Yeah, like it the way she was talking about it, like they now have these little signs. They have these little signs, like a green or a red. So if something happens and your family needs help, you put the red on your door, or leave the green up if everything's fine. If there's a disaster,
like when you're at the Brazilian steakhouse.
Oh my!
They have a Fogo de Chão watch.
Yes, that's where they got it.
Oh my!
Yeah. So I think people are. Well, listen here.
They need to combine the two. So when you put the green up, they bring you some steak.
Lamb. I would like some fresh lamb. That would be great. I think one of the main problems for us, especially in America, is that we're orphans. No matter what, we're orphans, unless you were Native American. We really do not have a homeland. Even though I'm fourth generation Utah, and I live in the fourth generation in the home that we live in. It was my great grandparents' home, but there's a word in Welsh that I will fuck it up if I try and say it, but the meaning is it's a longing for a home that is not actually a physical place. It's a space, and it's a feeling of home. And I think we are missing that. I think we're very orphaned when it comes to having a home hearth and a home fire to go to. And we're trying so desperately to reconstruct that, or to construct one. And that makes us desperate. And that is where we create some of this craziness.
It's interesting. I have exactly the opposite American story, whereas my family's very, very new here. And the people who are from another country, I knew them.
Yeah.
So I'm only second generation American. So my grandparents are from another place and all that good stuff.
That's amazing.
There's a word in Portuguese. My mom's family's from Portugal. There's a word called saudade. Saudade is one of those words that there's one word, but it takes about 20 minutes to try to explain that one word. But it is the combination of a longing for something that you're nostalgic about, that only your soul knows what it is.
Oh, I love that.
Saudade.
That's amazing.
It looks like the word saudade, saudade. Saudade. Okay. Well, if you're Brazilian, saudade in the continent, saudade.
Yeah.
And it's like what you're saying. And you know what? I wonder, you describing your discovery of the runes when you first were, got into that was saudade. Your soul found it.
Yeah.
And you find things like that. And I think what gets going on is right now people are just really into arguing.
Mm-hmm.
I hate arguing. 9 times out of 10, I won't do it, which is funny because I seem like I probably would dive right in. But now I'm an eye roller and a tongue clucker when you're not looking. You know, it's like I got that from my mom. You know, just the eye roll and just cluck the tongue. And anybody who knows me is picturing this, going, "Oh, I see her do that all the time." She really would. I said, "That's me trying not to argue." You know, because I used to argue a lot. And I was good at it, and I'd get like very, very, you know. And then I started watching other people argue. And then I started, you know, this was long back when arguing was freestyle and it wasn't on the internet.
Yeah.
When you could just like go up and bitch at somebody, that was just, you know, a very freeing time. We were talking about phones, you know, when you could end an argument by slamming down the phone. The phone receiver, you could take that phone receiver, you pick that up right up over your ear. You got to get some good arc on that. And then you just clunk it right down. And whoever was on the other end knew you meant business. You know, and that's gone. What do you do now? And you know what? And you can go and just suck through a tube.
Yeah, it's not the same, is it? No, it's even, you can't even use capital letters in text anymore because that, you know, like for me, I'm so old. It's just that I need the capital letters just to be able to see the fucking text. You know,
right? Yeah.
Like, oh great.
Well, you know, if
wait,
you're
mad at me.
30 years ago, I'd be typing with my thumbs. I would have chased you out of my village with a torch. I don't. When did this happen? And I think there's got to be millennials listening, going, "What are they talking about?" You know, there was something to say about the pleasure of when you left the house, you couldn't take a phone call.
Well,
it was a piece to that.
Yes, yeah. I completely agree. I think you know, there's no way to make an exclamation point anymore.
Yeah,
and it's just
without the phone slam.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm Portuguese and Sicilian. I might have a door slam in there too.
I was thinking the door slam earlier when you were talking about it, like,
you know,
slamming it or a table flip.
Wow. Yeah, that's effort. Yeah, we didn't have any table flippers. My according to my grandmother was a door slammer. Another relative that is alive and maybe listening, although she's going to be mad I said swear words, is a drawer slammer, like the silverware drawer. I thought all kids' forks looked like Uri Geller had gotten to them because, you know, invariably when you go to slam a drawer full of silverware, one fork decides to come up and it gets the tine bent back. And I thought that's what everybody's forks looked like. I didn't realize it was just because somebody couldn't keep calm and just be Portuguese.
Oh, but we're apologizing to her for our swear words.
Oh yes, yeah. You know, we talked.
I'm really sorry.
My mom is gonna be 94 in December.
Oh wow!
And she is 100% got all of her marbles.
Yeah.
And she is totally with it. She's way cool. She is somebody who taught me a lot about acceptance from the way back.
Wow.
Because I'm very fortunate. Both of my parents were people who enjoyed all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And they said, you know, you gotta basically taste from the whole table.
Yeah.
You know, because we're big on food in my family, you know, taste from the whole time. So when I look at people arguing now, and they're usually trying to argue against someone who frightens them or a concept that frightens them because it's different from what they know.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that are different from what they know. Algebra is different from what I know, but I have found a way to like live in a world with algebra. I just don't really do it. It's not for me. But you know, there's so much art. I think what do you think that's doing? That kind of, because you got to admit, static's at an all-time high lately.
You know, I really feel like we're just not, no one's willing to actually have discussion. Everyone, for some reason, we all need to be right. We don't all need to be, but I feel like that's where everyone just needs to be right. And so where is that coming from? I feel like, if I'm kind of like dipping into the cultural psyche, I really do feel like we don't have a purpose. I feel like most of us do not even remotely know ourselves. We don't know how we feel about things. We don't know what it feels like in our emotions or in our instinctual centers when something is right or wrong. We are just being told. I feel like most of the arguments these days are regurgitation. And people say that, well, I saw it, and they regurgitate it, and they can't even back up where it came from.
No, it's Pablo effect. They were spoon fed it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Throw it back up.
And I think that's exactly what's been happening. And until, let me put it this way. When I teach class about runes, no matter what, one of the first things we talk about are our different ways of knowing something. So most of the time, our only way that is legitimate in culture, because we'll go into this, is our logic. But our brain can't process some things that are instinctual or emotional. That would be somewhere different in your body, for me and my understanding and the way I work. So what does it feel like when something is right and it's not just love? And what does it feel like instinctually when you're in danger or something is wrong? We talk about that concept of you'll know in your gut will tell you when something's wrong. But what does it feel like when your gut tells you when something is right? So I have a class that I teach, and we spend 3 to 4 hours literally going back and forth between note taking and drum, journeying with rhythm and drum, to kind of explore our own bodies and where do we feel these different things. I'll tell you, most people have a very difficult time when we start moving into their, in Eastern terms, lower chakras, into their gut.
Right.
They don't know what to do with their emotions that are happening down there, because those are a lot of those toxic masculinity things that we kind of talked about in the beginning. It's anger, lust, survival, like a lot of these animalistic things.
So at least 4 out of the 7 deadly sins. Okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we could probably go to all those. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time trying to reintroduce people to themselves, and so that they can then have their own hearth and their own fire in which to warm themselves, to feed themselves. And then from there, you can go out and have discussion about things. But you can always, I like the term endarkenment instead of enlightenment. You take the idea someone's presenting you, you bring it into you, you process it logically, emotionally, and instinctually. And if it fits, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But at least you're processing it for yourself. And I think that's probably where we're really lacking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
huge.
yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I like endarkenment. When I first heard the term, when people were talking about they were doing shadow work, I really wasn't entirely at first when you hear the term, you're not sure. And I started learning that was going into the deeper, darker parts of yourself and doing a little, that's like going down to the basement to make improvements. Yeah.
Oh, and that's no matter what I think no matter what. Yeah, it's the stuff that's been covered up. It's the stuff that has a ton of dust on it. And you don't even see it's there.
It's the stuff to put you in therapy.
And the thing, I think my other favorite thing is that I think the other thing that really kind of feeds into this argumentative state is that we have a whole bunch of people, maybe all of us, who, not all of us, that's not true, who are refusing to look at our own traumas and process them and learn from them. And so we're constantly in a defensive mode, and we will never, and that, you don't back a dangerous animal into a corner who's hurt, because they will only attack. So we have all this trauma that the majority of people are experiencing, because unfortunately, we do have a couple generations that weren't really well raised because the parents didn't know how. And our technology comes so quickly now that parents really can't teach their kids about technology. It's the other way around. So we have all these new, our culture is progressing and changing so rapidly that parents have a hard time teaching parents have a hard time surviving it, let alone teaching their kids how to survive it. So we have these generations of people who actually are on their own and have been on their own trying to figure it out.
Well, they were raised by media. They were raised by a device.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. And so now what do? We're stuck in this, we don't know who we are at all.
You know, everybody does these little things. Well, if you were raised in the 70s or the 80s and, you know, you wake up stayed out until the street lights went on and all that kind of stuff was true.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small hobbit town in New England and throughout the 70s. And it was, you know, and it was a great, I see kids and my friends' kids, my friends' grandkids now and everything. And I remember there was always that, like, I'm going to end up being one of those people because when you are not a parent, you can't say anything to a parent because it's not your zone. So nope. I do try to, but I will tell you this. I know something about being a kid because that I've done.
Yep. This
is a different animal. It's not wired the same. It does not react the same. It is a stock and trade garden variety kid from 1978 and a stock and trade garden variety kid from 2018 are two completely different animals.
Yeah.
Culturally.
Absolutely.
And I kind of get where a lot of people say, you know, we turned around and we thought it was cute. First it was Dora the Explorer on the tablet. Now they're so deep into media that they can't come out.
They have zero. I'm 47, so I'm up there a little bit, but
don't expect me to agree with you. I'm going to be 54 in a couple of months, so I get it.
I think we're the perfect age, by the way. And I was dating. I don't know how the fuck it happened, by the way, but I was dating a millennial, and we were having a discussion, and I said via text, "Hey, this is kind of a big topic. Let's just discuss this face to face. Is that okay?" Well, the response I got was, "I'm a millennial. All of my big discussions have happened over text." And I thought to myself, what the fuck? Like,
wow.
Like I personally would like to see your face. I would like to see your body language. I would like to sense your energy. I would like to be eye to eye with you.
How about I'd like the damn respect for you to speak to me face to face?
Right, exactly. And then I'm like, oh.
Well, see, that's the thing. Really? We think it's disrespectful. They don't get why we think it's disrespectful.
Right. That's normal to them.
Right. It's not meant as a slight. No.
Right. And so if we talk about entitlement a little bit, I got to tell you, I'm kind of over entitlement in general, but I'm super irritated when I catch a lot of like the baby boomers that I know who are just as entitled as all the millennials that I know.
Different way, yeah.
Like, in a different way, yeah. And I'm like, wait. So you guys were all having the same problems in life. We can figure it out together. But this divide or this division that we keep feeding in between us is boomer. Really a mess.
It's exactly that comment. That's showing that's a perfect newsworthy anecdote of the exact division you're talking about. When the millennial just shouts out and snappy says, "Okay, boomer."
Yeah.
You know, now everybody's being a dick.
Yeah, right.
And that's not getting anybody anywhere.
I have a young man who is one of my clients, and we were talking one day. He's probably mid-20s. And it was back when the election was going on. And I said, so, like, what does your generation think about this? And he, without missing a goddamn beat, said, "We're just waiting for all the baby boomers to die so that we can actually go in and fix everything that's wrong." And I just was completely astounded by that, because I thought, well, if that's not actually helping, you get that, right? Like, that's not going to help the situation, because you're not doing anything, and you're just waiting and blaming someone else for the fact that you won't stand up or whatever the term would be, and actually fight for something that you want. Like bullshit. I call bullshit.
And then I've remembered training new folks in that were when I was an EMT and preceptor. I remember training new folks, and you get some folks, and I remember looking at my leadership colleagues, and they'd kind of look at me like, so how'd they do? And I'd be like, they're gonna kill somebody someday. This is not going to go well. But there are people like that, and you work with them because you don't want that to happen. But the other thing that is, and I just got to get this out there because I can't agree with you more, but I think you're going to agree with me on this one too. It's not so infrequent as to be depressing, but every once in a while, some bright, shiny, amazing, delightful human comes out of an area where you thought either existed entirely of curmudgeons or entitled snots. You're going to get there are some folks that just shine bright. So what I try to do is I sort of look at it like, like I'm looking out from, I'm a musician, and like I'm looking out from a stage, not that they do lighters anymore, and not that they would for me, but when we're looking like out at a concert, and we used to hold up big lighters and as I think, and and you look, and there's like, when you first see it start, it's all dark, and then you see this one little light, and then another light joins it, and then it becomes all these, and then it's all these points of light, and I kind of look at it that way. I gotta look out over that sea of okay boomer and you damn kids, and kind of look, I guess the way Mr. Rogers said it, find the helpers. Look for who the helpers are. Everything I learned, I pretty much learned from Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. I think we forgot a lot of important lessons out of that show.
I grew up so far in the country that we didn't get those shows. In fact, I'm not at home right now because we have really shitty internet where I live, and it wouldn't have worked. I had to come into town to have the internet, and because I live so far out in the country. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think that. And I do feel like I feel a bit like it's a web, and I feel like the more I progress and the more I fine tune exactly what I want and how I want to contribute in the community, that it really does line up with so many other people, and those people actually begin. It's like you're a spider, you create a web, and you start to catch the people that you are going to work really well with, and you start to attract that. I don't necessarily believe in law of attraction, but you really just start to recognize that in other people. And I believe that there's a collective, a new collective consciousness kind of thing, like a new group thought that's coming about, and you're starting to see that kind of surface and rise as these little tiny like white cap waves throughout our culture. And I really do enjoy watching that, and I really love seeing these little pockets of, I think they're almost like little families. They're all age ranges, and they're coming together because they're looking for community, and they're looking for family, so to speak, and they're looking for people who are like-minded and who they can build relationships with, and relationships that are going to be very productive for their children, for their community. They're looking for deeper connection other than just saying hi to people down at Walmart when you pass them.
Carlos Santana, I'm a big fan, and I love his music, and I highly recommend that anybody read his autobiography. And one of the concepts in that, and he talks a lot about his spiritual journey. He had a very difficult childhood that was fraught with all kinds of horrors. Plus, and he takes you through like the scary, sad parts. He takes you through the amazing music parts, and all of that. But one of the things that he's a very spiritual guy, and he's very tuned in Eastern wise, and he's a big fan of Sri Chinmoy, and so one of the things he talks about, which I think is exactly what you're saying, is the universal tone. He refers to his hum as the universal tone, and people, you either tune in and vibe up with it, or you don't. You find people that are literally, I mean, these are old expressions, but I think it all means the same thing, on your wavelength.
Yeah.
or in my case,
Absolutely.
little sleeper cells of weirdos. But it's well, no, that's what it's about. I always
Yeah.
try to tell friends who have kids, grandkids, and folks. I was bullied in school because I was strange. Well, I had all kinds of things going wrong for me, but the thing is that it wasn't a great experience, and I didn't really enjoy it. But the people that were great with me and that were awesome friends, we're still friends to this day. So that's you take it with it. It does get better. I know that there are a lot of people that get bullied for a lot of reasons, and none of them make sense to me. I never will understand that. And I hope I never do, because the day it makes sense, that means something went wrong. But we are the weirdos. There's a time that the people who used to turn their nose up at you and didn't invite you places, now they want to talk to you at parties, because their life with their very mundane life, that everything peaked when they were 17, 18 years old. Now they're at, 40, 50 something.
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything creative. Their life has sucked the soul right out of them, if they even had one to begin with, and everything. Yeah. And all of a sudden, artsy people, different people are interesting. Speaking of different, growing up in the 70s, I have one image and one image only of a Mormon person from Utah, and it's Donny Osmond, and you're not it. All I know of Utah was the Osmonds.
I love the Osmonds.
They're awesome. They're terrific musicians too.
Well, great musicians. Yeah. The funny thing about that is, for those people who will see the picture of me, I wasn't born with all these tattoos, clearly. And growing up in Utah was very interesting, because I had brown hair and like hazel green eyes. I wasn't blonde and blue eyed. My sister frequently teased me that I was adopted because I didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. It was very interesting, that being the standard, and not the Osmonds are not that at all. But growing up where if you're different, you get teased. Like I was bullied. Let's see. The grade school I went to begin with only had 35 kids in it. So that was fine. It was when we got bused to the bigger school when everything got fucked, right? Like I remember getting jumped in the bathroom by every sixth grade boy in the school. And it was not fun. It was really shitty. And in fact, that's probably where, like, I hate labels, first of all. I only use them because I use them and I incorporate them and then I let them go. I was called gay from the very get-go. And probably even until the last 6 or 7 years, I thought, well, if you're gay, you have to be gay. Well, I'm actually not. And I learned a new term this weekend at Pride. It's called omnisexual. And if I were to label myself, I guess I label myself that a little more than anything else. But so for years I was bullied, and you're put into this box. So you're gay, so you have to be this way.
What you're saying is you eat all the Skittles.
Yes, I love Skittles, by the way. Thank you for bringing up food. Now I'm hungry again.
So eat all the Skittles.
It's
I've always used an expression, fair fucks to you, which means, and I take that to mean for anybody, anything.
Yeah.
I just want people to enjoy themselves, have a good time. And I've been very honored to, on more than one occasion, been somebody's first out. I think they practice on me because they know it's gonna be okay. This way they like to do anything. I think we did good. Yep. But I've always had the same concept, and I think works in the other end. It's just make sure someone is worthy of you.
Yeah.
The rest of it's irrelevant.
Yeah. Yes.
If someone is worthy of you and treats you as well as you treat them.
Yeah. Then I really
rest is
feel
details.
Like there's a rune called Manaz or man in Anglo-Saxon, but it does represent like contracts, but I use it a lot in weddings. And the sigil, the symbol actually looks like two flagpoles facing each other, touching with their little triangular flags touching in the center. So it represents two complete whole beings coming together to create a third. And usually in readings, when that comes up, it's funny, it comes up to signify imbalance in relationships, and it happens a lot. And I'm always very surprised to see. Of course, when someone's coming to you for a reading, you're a tarot reader. People don't come to you when everything's great. They come to you when something's wrong.
True. Everything's
so
fabulous, so I thought I'd want a reading. That never happens.
Yes, never ever happens. And so it's always interesting to me when I get those readings, and that comes up a lot. And I really do think that has to do with our self-worth and our concept that we've what, I'm so done with don't be a quitter. Well, actually, it's good to know when something's done. It's good to know when something's
That's
ended.
an art.
That's
an
God,
art
it's
into
an art
of itself. It's what is it they used to say? You got to know when you've stayed too long at the fair.
Yes, and it's not when you're out of money and drunk and go. We don't need to wait until it's desperate to know that it's over, but that's not something that's valued in our culture at all.
No, you got to drag it out to the bitter end.
Yeah, and people
bitter is really what it is.
My ex and I are still very good friends, and we actually still live together and have a business space together. But people want to choose sides, and I'm like, why are you choosing sides? We're still friends. Like, this is fine. But even people on the outside want to be able to like pick a side and want it to be like, why are you ending? Why aren't you together? And if you're ending, there has to be a fight. I'm like, no, there's no more fighting than there normally was. And why do we have to have this? Oh, you watch the Kardashians. Oh, okay, now I get it. Like, I get why you think you watch Jersey Shore. Now I get why you think there has to be like a dramatic fight against every.
Well, once again, McLuhan was right. The media is the message.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
I love that book. I always tell people they should reread it every once in a while because it kind of really, especially if you work in any kind of media or marketing and everything, the media is the message. Marshall McLuhan, a great book. But it's crazy. Speaking of messages, so how did you find out you were a medium? Everybody has that one story because it's the gift. I've spoken to people. The gift can be very unusually varied among people. Yeah. It's as highly individual as people are. So tell me a little bit about how your gift works and how you discovered it.
Okay. So when I got in contact with the runes, one of the things that the community that I had kind of gotten involved in was all the very white light, love light stuff. And also, we didn't really talk about being connected to the runes in terms of psychic terms, or in terms of like, in the cosmology, there's Yggdrasil, which is the great tree that holds all of the 9 worlds in Norse cosmology. So the tree is actually what I feel like I'm connected to. And that way I can then be connected to like the world of the dead, the world of the gods, so on and so forth. So that we didn't really have the language to speak about that. So for a long time, I thought it was anti what I was doing. I thought the woo-woo shit was very anti what was happening. So it took me a while to actually break through my own barriers and actually become comfortable with the fact that, I can sense and communicate. The first time it happened, it was, I had mentioned earlier, I had a spiritual metaphysical store. And one night a woman had come in, and it was pretty quiet. We were talking, and I had just had this kind of overwhelming sense that her mother had passed away. And so I asked her, and she said yes. And I said, and her favorite flower was gardenia. And I smelled it as I said it, and I don't know what the fuck gardenia smells like. So that was really for me like I don't even know what, like I couldn't, if I would have smelled
Why
it.
Why am I saying gardenia? Why am I smelling flowers?
Right. Yeah. So then we began speaking about her, and I was like, how am I getting like, okay, this shit's really happening. Probably within the next few days, I had another someone come into the store, And I'm speaking to her and I'm like, okay, so your dad smoked cherry tobacco. And she's like, yeah, we hated that shit. We tried to get him to do something different. And then I watched this giant tiger jump out from behind her at me. And I, listen, you can't make this shit up. And it's sometimes I always say that if you know you can't make it up, you know you're having a woo experience, a psychic experience.
Woo, indeed.
Yeah, because and I asked her, I said, listen, this is what I saw. And she goes, I had a cat named Tiger who died a couple of years ago who always sat on my shoulder and protected me from my abusive relationship. And I was like, you okay, all right. So at that point, I now know, okay, just start trusting whatever's happening, and it develops, and you become more I became, and this happens for everyone, I believe, you become more confident and comfortable as you're exercising this new ability.
Well, you got to break it in.
Oh, you have to break it in. And for me, the way it works usually is if I'm doing a rune reading, normally people are coming to me because they need to change things in their life. And so we're looking at patterns of behavior. That's pretty cut and dry, but the runes are very like
they're insightful. I've had rune reading. Very insightful.
Oh my God, so insightful, so transformative. If people are coming to me because they want to talk to their dead, the first, and this is what tripped me out in the beginning, the first thing the dead do to me is they make me feel how they died. So whether it's I will feel a pressure in my chest, and I know pretty much at that point it's a heart attack. The really creepy ones are I had one and I felt horrible because I don't have blonde hair, but I probably should. Like, I'm seriously like, it just, I'm just letting it go.
You are totally a blonde.
Oh my God, I'm so blonde. Well, I'm white now, so that's probably pretty close.
Platinum. It's platinum.
I was talking to somebody and I'm like, so I just feel like the back of my head, like, it's just like exploding. And I didn't even think about it. And she burst into tears and she's like, he shot himself in the head. And I was like, oh my God, like, I felt very inconsiderate at that moment, but that's how, like, it'd be great if I got names. Oh yes. So, Frank Don Robinson, was your grandfather. And he's here with me right now. It'd be great, but that doesn't always happen. How it happens is they tell me how they died. And that's when people are like, okay, yeah, I know who's here. I'm like, okay. And then I look at it as a thread. We hold on to that thread in the tapestry. That's them. And we have a conversation as best we can. And that's just developed over time too. Like, I think people think it's going to be like you open the store and it's all fine and dandy. But you don't just go to the gym, work out once and look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Or you don't just hop on, right? You don't hop on the treadmill for 20 minutes and then you can run a triathlon. That's not how it works. It takes work and
practice.
And practice. And this is where I think it's
trial and error also.
Oh my God, this is why I think it's very important when you're learning to read for people, whether it be runes or tarot, you need to read for people, because the context that you need to have to make the cards or runes make sense is the person you're reading. It's not you, it's the person you're reading. So if I'm like, okay, I'm just going to throw some runes down and like, what do they mean? Well, who knows what the fuck they mean, because there's no context of the person to be read. So reading people that you know can help you put context into the cards and into the runes and really start making sense of things.
It'll kind of show you the pretzel logic of divination, because it is nonlinear logic.
Yeah. I had to ask the runes and the Nornir, who are the kind of similar to the fates in the cosmology of the North, but I had to ask them, I'm like, I need you to give me a way to do a reading that puts it into linear space, because frankly, this is too exhausting. We need to do this. And they did. I'm very lucky and blessed in that aspect. They did.
So if folks were looking to get a reading, they can go to www.runewalker.com. Do you do over the Zoom and over the...
Yeah, I do. I'll do in person. I have a place in Salt Lake that I'm at every now and then. It's called the Conjuring Tree. Or I do Zoom readings all over the world. So awesome. That's totally
and folks doable. Who would be looking to get a read, you can go to runewalker.com and get some information there. And just a reminder that they can hear you on Rune Walking in Modern Times podcast, Psychic Medium, the podcast. And if you're up for a bit of tomfoolery, there is Manly Minds.
Yes.
I think that my biggest takeaway is that, and I'm using the capital WE, we're flourishing. People who are learning, and I got to go back to one thing you said when you said this is the best, when we find out we're more or less of an age, this is the best time of our lives. Mm-hmm. Everybody's always like, well, you know, I see so many people who live in the past. Mm-hmm. Or who want to be, they reminisce, well, now I'm getting old, and now I'm this, and now I'm that, and you know what, that's inevitable, and it's a privilege. Mm-hmm. And but one of the things everybody's like, well, you know, when was the best time of your life? And I'm like, now,
right now.
But my answer has always kind of sort of been, I've always like tried to, ever since I came out of my journey. Yeah, you know, I want to hold on to it dearly, not with a death grip, but I want to savor it. I want to think that the best version of myself is not one that looked a certain way. It's one that's evolved to where I am. And actually the next best version of myself could be tomorrow. Or
there's a really interesting concept that we've talked about on Manly Minds, because we had one of our local therapists on, and it was very interesting. He said that every decision you've ever made is perfect because of your experiences and your thoughts and your education. All of your experiences in life have led up to that decision. You couldn't have made a different one.
Right.
So it's really interesting for me to kind of look back now and say, the only reason we think it's a bad decision, right, is because we're looking back on it and we know differently now.
Maybe but it was something we needed to learn.
Well, yeah, and if you didn't learn it, then you'll still make the decision over and over, which is where in readings we talk about the patterns of behavior. But when I say to people, you know, like every decision you've ever made is perfect, and you can't. So you're perfect as you are, and they look at me stunned, and I just keep repeating it. Could you have made another decision? No. Then it was perfect. And you are perfect just the way you are, because you couldn't have been different. And now you can be perfect in another moment, in another decision, and keep going. And we're so frustrated thinking that we're going to make the wrong decisions in life that sometimes it paralyzes us. And then we think we're not making it. But we're perfect just the way we are. And I think that's one of the biggest things that can change a lot of people's mentality and a lot of the way they approach life, is you're perfect the way you are.
I don't think I could add to that. That's outstanding. So what's next for Kenn, real quick, before we sign off?
Oh gosh, my initiation is next. So shamanic purification is a really interesting journey.
We ain't gonna do this at Zuni style, are we?
Well, so like I don't know. I kind of know some of the things I have to do, but no, I don't
Sundance?
know. No, but there will be similar offerings, yes, at some point. I'll let you know.
Please keep in touch. It goes without saying, I would love to have you back.
I would love to come back. So thank you. And like the next thing for me is we'll be coming out this year with a podcast from the Northern Traditions Shamanic Guild, talking about the traditions of the North based upon Anglo-Saxon and Norse cosmology. So in a more modern take and how it applies now. So that's coming this year. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And we're perfect just the way we are.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Macabre World. You can find us on the web at www.darkerartsstudio.com.